Isn't it just great to be here? When you think now of this time last year when the Dominican community here, Blackfriars, was celebrating this Mass in an empty church. I was here on that occasion, and some of the brothers, of course, were here in the year before that. Isn't it just wonderful to see a full church of people gathering together, and indeed those who are gathering on the live stream? A great moment of thanksgiving, a great moment of sharing. And sharing, I think, is the love of charity, of communication, of trading, if you like, of getting involved with each other and coming together. Even in this online world that we have been in the last while, I think one of the things certainly that I have valued most is the idea of coming together again and meeting, seeing people's faces, looking into their eyes. So isn't it truly a moment of thanksgiving that we're gathering here together this evening for this great sacrifice of thanksgiving? To take the theme tonight there from the Gospel we had, as at the beginning, having loved those who were his own in the world, he loved them to the end. And I took that phrase at the beginning of Mass from Pope Francis, who said that having loved those who were his own in the world, he loved them to the end. And every one of us can say that he gave his life for me. And therefore he's involved very much in the story of each one of our lives and in the story that we share with one another. For we don't have just our own story. It's not just what happens to me or the things that God gives to me that are different from the things that God gives to you or someone else. No, we share that. We come together. We gather to celebrate this great mystery and this great sacrifice of thanksgiving. And that involves, I think, the three great things for every time we come together to celebrate the Mass. We need the three great gifts of faith and hope and charity. His charity continues to the end. The love that is charity continues to the end. And so as a community, as a church, we are called in different ways and at different times to service in the love that is charity, in a way that we share in different kinds of ways and different kinds of roles and different kinds of preaching and different kinds of service, but always united in that service of thanksgiving. And thanksgiving for what? Thanksgiving for the fact that he loves us to the end, that each one of us can say that he gave his life for me, and so that we can look into the eyes of each other, we can embrace the presence of one another, we can shake hands, we can bump elbows, we can fist bump, we can do whatever it is that keeps COVID safety going. But the reality of that is that we can look into the eyes of each and every other person and say that that person has been chosen, called by God in a particular way, and we can give thanks for that. So this feast day, this day at the beginning of our 3 great days, has 3 things that it puts before us. Now, somebody say to me, you always say, Father, there's 3 things. Well, that's in order that you get out of the door before there's time. But the instruction in the Missal says tonight that the priest should preach on the institution of the Holy Eucharist and of the priestly order and the commandment of the Lord concerning fraternal charity. The institution of the Holy Eucharist and of the priestly order and of the commandment of the Lord concerning fraternal charity. And it's those 3 things that I would like to put before you this evening in terms of faith and hope and charity, faith and hope and love. So the faith that we have, so we come together for the Eucharist. One of the things that has really touched me, impressed me over the last 2 years of COVID, has been how the faithful and the laity have been able to respond to the challenges that there have been on the restrictions regarding the celebration of Mass in public by attending Mass online in such great droves. Now, thank God, we're moving back to having it in person. But what a great witness that was, certainly for me as a priest. Now, I can go to the chapter room or to an altar in the church here at any point and celebrate the Mass. There was no absence of the Mass from my life. And I felt that as a great pain, that the people that I was to carry in my heart as a priest couldn't have the same intimacy, the same connection with the body and blood, soul and divinity of Christ that I had in holding it in my hands. And yet the witness that each one of you bore to that, and bear tonight by coming back to Mass after that time, by holding that Eucharistic faith alive in your hearts and giving that thanksgiving to God every time we gather together online for the Eucharist. That's why it is a great moment of grace and thanksgiving to have you back with us. Not just, of course, tonight, we've been back together for a while, but in a sense we're beginning to re-establish that. But that great moment of thanksgiving that is ours in the Eucharist. And what are we giving thanks for in the Eucharist? We're giving thanks for the God who comes down and breaks himself open for us, who pours himself out for us in the Eucharist. And the unity that that sacrament represents has been broken for us in a time of isolation, a time of enforced division. And that should help us in many ways to reflect on the witness that our Eucharistic faith is inviting us to give in our broken and divided world. What's the cause of that? It's the cause of that division. Well, we want our God to be invincible, don't we? We want our God to interrupt our lives and put everything right. But he doesn't do it like that. The witness that we bear this evening to the broken bread and the poured out cup, the witness that we bear, is that God comes into our world and comes right down to the very bottom. He loves us to the end. So he's with us even in that most weak moment that we've got, in that moment of division, in that moment of brokenness. God comes to be with us. And then in that moment we're inspired to have faith and we move forward to hope. And where is our hope? In that moment of thanksgiving, in that moment of Eucharistic thanksgiving. Even in all the times that we were online, we're still online, and still people online who are there, but most of us are making our way back to church and are grateful for that. But there always had to be somebody there to celebrate the Mass. This community particularly has borne witness to that in celebrating the Mass. And one of the things that people have said is that one of the things of tuning into Mass in Blackfriars has been the fact of seeing people gathering for the Mass together, the community here gathering for the Mass together. It's been a particular witness of this community that so many of us were able to be here together, one household gathering together. And the hope that that gave, that we could gather together again. But there had to be somebody there to do it. And in order for that to be the case, somebody had to be called. And that's the great joy of the priesthood. That some people are called to serve God in a particular way, in sharing in the ministerial priesthood, a particular expression of our communal baptismal calling. and the particular work of this house, as you know. And I owe so much to so many of you who are before us this evening, for I myself trained for the priesthood in this house many years ago, too many years ago. I'll go there. But there are men behind me this evening who have, there are many men behind me who have served valiantly as priests. I'm not even going to go into that. Their example is wonderful. But the particular example I want to think of is the men behind me this evening who are preparing for the priesthood and who are being served by you, who have served so many people coming to Blackfriars over the years in preparing the hearts of priests, of Dominican priests in particular. And the great joy, I want to say to them in particular, if that they have a quarter of the joy that I have had in the priesthood to date, they will be very blessed and thankful men indeed. But the hope and the thing we can rejoice in terms of hope is the fact that the Lord has called people into that particular service, and that service is something that is at the benefit of one another. You know, in the Mass, of course, is the summit of our sacramental life. But in recalling our baptism, in the sacrament of confession, reconciliation, in the sacrament of the anointing of the sick, we require the service of other priests. Each one of us requires the service of priesthood in our lives for that sacramental economy to be made known to us. And the Lord comes in the middle of that as one who serves to show us that. And that brings us to that great joy of the love of charity, loving us to the end. The Lord who stoops down to wash the feet of his disciples in the gospel this evening says to us, do this in memory of me. In the gospel reading that we've had, he says, as you have seen me doing this, so do that to one another. And in the Mass, every time we see that, do this in memory of me. And that particular word, which comes at the very end of the institution narrative, that particular phrase, can help us to draw together all of the service that comes to us. The service of the priests who have celebrated the sacraments with us and for us, the priest who's baptized us, the priest who's heard our confessions, the priest who's present to celebrate the Mass at the altar when we had to be absent, those who were present to help him. The people who brought us to church for baptism, who catechized us, who were there to speak to us when we needed them. All of those things are brought together when we say, do this in memory of me. The presence of the Lord coming down, stooping down to be with us in the lowest moment, and stooping down to wash the feet of his disciples. He is embracing them at that low moment, that low part of their body. And so there he is at that low moment in our lives when we need to be raised up. So we're invited this evening for the next few days, in some ways, to see how low can we go. Can you go as low as the Lord to the feet? How can you embrace that place that is hurting and that needs healing and that needs redemption? And can you see yourself in that place, rather than in the way that perhaps we want to see ourselves in the things that we acquire to ourselves? Can we be in solidarity there with one another in faith, hope, and charity, a Eucharistic faith which gives thanks for the graces that have been given to us, a hope that sees our needs being continually served by the ministry of the church and by the priesthood of Christ, and a charity which doesn't see in that any kind of inequality or privilege, and which indeed challenges us when those notions come to us, and rather see in a freedom that blossoms in a Eucharistic faith, a thanksgiving, a faith of thanksgiving, a faith that throws our arms out in thanksgiving and allows us to imitate the Lord, who stretches out his arms on the cross and is embraced by the Father, and the Father's embrace in the unity of the Holy Spirit is the same embrace that takes us, each and every one of us, to himself in faith, hope, and charity. He loves us till the end. Seeing those who are his own in the world, he loves them to the end. He stoops down to us. He picks us up from the very bottom and he raises us up. He stretches out his hands in trust and love on the cross, and he invites us to imitate him in doing that in memory of him. Let's be surprised. Let's be surprised by what he might do next.